So it's now been about 8 months since the R36S originally hit the market, and especially now with the AliExpress sales going on when I'm recording this video, you can buy the R36S for a little under $30. Yeah, so about $26, $27, $28 depending on the seller on AliExpress. Right now when I'm recording this, you can get this handheld. So if you want to check out the prices of the R36S, I'll have a link down below in the description. It'll be an affiliate link. It comes at no extra cost to you, but just help support the channel when you buy something through that link. And even when it's not on sale like it is right now, you can still get the handheld at its normal price for, I would say, anywhere between $35 and $40 on places like AliExpress. So even if you don't happen to catch one of these AliExpress sales or from another platform that happen multiple times a year, you can still get a really good deal on the R36S. So after 8 months of this handheld coming out and me originally taking a look at it on this channel, I wanted to talk about it a little more, explore how has the R36S held up, is it still worth it, are there any new budget competitors in this price range, and just take an overall look at the R36S in 2024. So most notably, the R36S comes in with an RK3326, which is pretty common for a lot of budget handhelds. You can see it in a lot of other handhelds in this general price range, and even some that are noticeably more expensive than what you're going to be paying for the R36S. So I'll just start off mentioning the performance really quickly. I went over this in my original video, and I'm sure so many others have, and I bet a lot of you have already seen a review of another handheld with the RK3326, pretty much the exact same specs elsewhere as the R36S has, so it's probably nothing too surprising to you. But what you're going to be able to do is pretty much everything up to the PS1, and then you're going to be able to handle some Dreamcast, and you're going to be able to handle some N64 and some PSP. And for all of these systems, there's going to be quite a few games that are out of reach for you. There's little tweaks you can do, such as changing the emulator in your settings to get better performance. You can change some RetroArch settings as well, so you can squeeze out a few extra drops of performance on all these systems. But with these three, the PSP, N64, and Dreamcast, like I said, I would say, depending on the console, maybe anywhere from a third to half of the games will be able to run, some more than others, but everything below that, like I said, up to the PS1, you're going to be good. And even on the PS1, you're going to be able to get quite a few games playing at a 2x resolution, which on other handhelds in this price range, you aren't even able to do. For example, on the Miu Mini Plus, which is more expensive than the R36S, very few PlayStation 1 games on there will be able to run at a 2x resolution. So if you care about that, the R36S has a leg up for a much cheaper price. And of course, all of your other older handhelds, 8-bit, 16-bit era consoles, some arcade games, all this kind of stuff, as I'm sure you'll expect, will be able to run very well on here. And then we have the controls. So there's one thing I want to mention before I go further in this review. There's now, more than 8 months later, more than one different versions of the R36S out. Not that they're labeling it like R36S V1, R36S V2. It's all still selling under the same name, R36S. But from what I've read, there are some differences on the different versions of the R36S. You might be getting slightly different controls. There's different screen models that are used in these handhelds. All of them are going to be 3.5-inch 480p, but they're going to be different model screens. And apparently that can mess with some stuff when you're trying to upgrade your firmware, which I'm going to talk about more in a second. So keep all that in mind. You're going to be buying these from different AliExpress sellers, or maybe even from a different platform, so you don't know if they're selling old stock or which specific version you're getting from them. I imagine most of them will not be listing that kind of information, and they probably have no idea themselves. So you should keep that in mind, that there may be some differences between the one that I have the original version here, and the one that you buy, or the one that you hear other YouTubers talk about, or people on other social media platforms talking about the R36S. There may be some slight differences from the one they talk about from the one you get. So it all depends, because possibly, like I said, you could get old stock. But when it comes to the controls, on this model at least, and from what I've heard on the others as well, there may be some improvement on the newer models. They're not super great. You have, of course, 2 analog sticks, which are okay. And again, you have to keep in mind with all this, you're paying like $30, $35 for this handheld, so you shouldn't have too high expectations here. For $30, $35 or so, these analog sticks are fine, and for most games, you're not even going to really be using them anyway. For some N64 or PlayStation 1 games or something like that, yeah, sure, you will be using them a bit here and there, and for those kind of games, I think the analog sticks are perfectly fine. And then we have our buttons. The buttons are notoriously pretty stiff. They're not super great. I would say they are playable. They're just by no means my favorite buttons I've ever used. Again, keep that in mind. It's $30, $35. It's about what I'd expect. And then with the D-pad is okay again. It's also very stiff. There have been some people that have done some mods, like slightly loosening a specific screw on the board that's close to behind the D-pad. Look into that more before you do it. Don't just do it based off of my description. But there have been some people, especially on these earlier models, from what I understand, that did try to do that to fix things, and it can be done, as well as the fact you have very clicky shoulder buttons and triggers. So I would say overall, the controls aren't super great, but they're okay and they're playable, and And for $30, especially if this is one of your first retro handhelds, you just want to buy this maybe to see if you enjoy the hobby and you'll actually get any use out of it before spending any more money on an expensive device. I would say they're sufficient, or if you just want a cheap backup handheld for whatever purposes, I'd say they are playable for the vast majority of people. They just don't feel amazing or anything like that. So when it comes to the software, you have ArcOS on this handheld. In this review, I'm going to be using the stock games card and the stock OS card for a specific reason. As you can see, it comes with ArcOS, and this version of ArcOS is still completely usable. You're going to be missing out on some features because it doesn't have built-in Wi-Fi, and I've heard some people have some problems with Wi-Fi even using a dongle, but this experience is good and much better than what you're going to be getting on other budget handhelds, for example like the X6, I don't even know if that's still sold anymore, or these kind of other cheap generic handhelds that really can't play anything beyond SNES. Even the stock ArcOS experience is good, and if you want to upgrade it, you still can do that, but it's not super easy. There's some problems with number one, the microSD card compatibility. For some reason, the R36S just doesn't like some microSD cards and will just not work with them. And if you want to go on the R36S subreddit, there is some information people have put together very helpfully to show which cards work and which don't. And another thing you have to keep in mind with this though is which model of the R36S do you have, because again, I said there are some differences between the older ones and the newer ones. Even though they're all going to be called the R36S, you have to do a little bit of poking around with the file to figure out which one you have. Again, check out the R36S subreddit for this. There's a lot of really helpful information there if you want to check out if you do want to upgrade your version of ArcOS, because apparently the screen model that's used in the handheld actually does change some things when it comes to using a certain version of ArcOS. So you had to figure that kind of stuff out before finding which version of ArcOS you should use to upgrade to. That's why in this video I'm not bothering to do more than just use the stock cards and show you guys the stock experience. Not saying that some of the newer versions might not have a different microSD card with a newer version of ArcOS or something, so you do have to keep all that in mind if you want to upgrade ArcOS for your R36S. It's not absolutely necessary. I would say it's probably a good practice at least to clone the contents of this SD card to a branded card so you don't have to worry about failure. Again, that's not absolutely necessary either, and if you're getting a super budget device, maybe you don't care about that stuff and you just want something to play. I'm not saying you have to, but I would at least recommend doing that at some point in the future. So after 8 months, there have been some changes with the R36S. There are some unique problems that you're going to have with this handheld that you won't have with other handhelds that are generally pretty cheap but a bit more expensive than the R36S. So if you can get this handheld for a good price still, and like I said, some people are finding them on sale on AliExpress after using the coupons. Keep that in mind. The prices I'm mentioning are after using the coupons AliExpress gives you for the sales. They're finding them for about $25, $26, $27, $28, more so closer to $28 I would say after all of your fees and everything else. But you can get them for a very cheap price there, and even if you're going to be paying $30, $35, or maybe even up to $38, I would say that's still a pretty good deal. Of course, you have to think, do you want to spend a bit more money and get something like the Miu Mini Plus? Of course, you don't get analog sticks, and it is somewhat less powerful, but you are getting a better community, better custom firmware, better controls. If you want to spend a little bit more money, you can buy Ambernic handheld like the RG35XX Plus or the RG35XXH. You can also get very good deals on these handhelds on sale too. So if you want to just think about spending $20 or more, you can also get many other great handhelds. So don't think that you have to be spending like $100 more to get something better. No, in a close price range, there are still very good handhelds that are better than the R36S. But in this price range, if you really just want to spend around $30, I would say there is nothing that beats the R36S. Even other handhelds like the R35 Plus or the R35S Plus, I kind of forget the exact name. There are other handhelds that have pretty much the exact same specs, but when it comes to the price and the community, like I said, the R36S subreddit is pretty active, has a lot of very helpful information there, and I'm sure there's some other people elsewhere talking about this handheld. I would really say the R36S is in its own lane, and I still think it really holds up after 8 months and is still the undisputed ultra budget king. So again, if you want to buy this handheld, I'll put a link down below in the description. It'll be an affiliate link, comes at no extra cost to you, and helps support the channel. So if you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.